Hello everyone, my name is JayJen.
And this is Logan.
And welcome to the WireTap. We are now on the cusp of 300,000 cases in the United States of coronavirus. And, meanwhile, China, they're just sitting at 81,000.
It's impressive.
With just over, I believe it's 3,100 deaths in China, and we are now up to, I believe we are now at 8,000, just over 8,000 now. So our numbers keep rising, and the media gleefully reporting all of this because it makes Trump look bad, and they couldn't have asked for anything better in an election year to happen to Donald Trump than a global health pandemic to use to try to destroy him in the ways that they could not before. One thing that I wanted to address that we did not in the last episode was precisely that, how this affects Trump going forward in terms of the election, in terms of his approval, everything like that. From what I've seen thus far, it's pretty well in Trump's favor in terms of the approval for how he's handled it so far, at least from what I saw, by multiple percentage points. I can't remember what the exact percentage was.
Last poll I saw, it was about a 60% approval.
That's what I was thinking, that it was about 60%. I can't remember what the disapproval was. It was in the
probably in the 30s.
Yeah, I mean,
there's always the undecided.
But yeah, it was close to 60%, and mid to upper 30s in terms of disapproval, which is interesting whenever you contrast it with the media response to all of this. And this is the one thing, and I believe that we had mentioned it before, that would be the thing that decides the election. And I believe that we said multiple times, if the economy stays afloat, Donald Trump wins, no question. Where we are now, though, puts that wholly, at least in the on the economic front, in a bit of a topsy-turvy situation. However, the other thing that we have to remember is that Americans do not like switching presidents in the midst of turmoil.
Yes.
And in modern history, for the last while, and for the last 30 years, we've allowed presidents to serve their 2 terms pretty well regardless. But Americans don't like switching in times of turmoil. That's why, you give, FDR during the Great Depression and then into World War II, that's why you have things like that, because we just don't like changing hands like that in the midst of that. So this is going to be done, though. I hope. If it's not done by November, we have a whole new set of problems, because by then you literally have the fabric of society, not just in the United States and in the Western world, but globally, being torn at the seams. If this is an issue and a pandemic that continues on, long into the summer, even just that, let alone into the fall. From what we see right now, it looks like this is something that extends, into May, and hopefully in America looks like it should be done by June. We've moved on by June. All of this is tentative. All of this is hopeful. It could be earlier. It could be later. But that is just what we're hoping for right now. And one thing that I've noticed is, to a larger issue of how people are responding to the government's response to coronavirus, if that makes sense. How people are responding to how fast the government is moving. This whole incident has demonstrated to me how quickly a large portion of the American people, and surprisingly conservatives, have started running to the government to do a whole myriad of things, to provide a whole myriad of services. And I'm not talking about what we talked about in our last episode about the stimulus. Okay, I made my point very clear that these are extenuating circumstances to where you can make the exception on your principle because these are things that would normally never happen. And abiding by your principle before would have allowed you to take the debt on now without any issue. Because beyond a matter of principle, it's dangerous the amount of debt that we've taken on. It was dangerous the amount of debt that we had 10 years ago under the Obama administration whenever we talked about how it birthed the Tea Party movement. It was dangerous then. It's no less dangerous now, and it sure as heck ain't less dangerous whenever we have $8 trillion more added onto it. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way, and specifically here in Missouri, the fact that there was such widespread pressure from people for our governor, Mike Parson, to declare a stay-at-home order. And this is just one example. There's a couple of different things that we could address under this point. But there was a lot of pressure. There were a lot of people, slamming him and wanting to know, why he has not declared a stay-at-home order. And to me, it seems quite simple. If you're a person who is connected to the world at all, even if you merely watch the 5 o'clock news at night, even if that is as small as your news consumption is, even Twitter. Okay, you know what? Let's break this down even further. If you get all of your news from Facebook, you should know not to go out right now. You should know that you should just stay home. You shouldn't just go out and about. You shouldn't, just go on a shopping spree or something like that to the mall. You should stay home. Do you really need the government to tell you that you have to stay home and that you have these stay-at-home orders? Because the extenuating circumstances of those stay-at-home orders is the economic impact of those for now businesses that are going to have to shut down and your industry and your commerce. Those are the extenuating circumstances, and that was one of the reasons why Parson did not want to declare one yet. And, it seems as though just he kind of had to at this point, not because necessarily of coronavirus, but because of the public pressure and the outcry for it, which is unfortunate. And the thing about these kind of times is, most of the time I would also, be disappointed that he bowed to the crowd. But the thing is that this crowd that we have now isn't just the normal outrage. This is people fueled by fear, fueled by panic. So it makes it all the more volatile and it makes it all the more dangerous. But do you really need to be told these things, Do we really need the government leading us along every step of the way? And this will become clearer as time goes on as to what the federal government did or didn't do in preparation for coronavirus. This will only become clear and more apparent as time goes on. But people are just outcrying for the government to lead them by the hand and do everything here. And folks, you have to take your own personal responsibility to put yourself in front of these things and prepare for, the government not being able to provide you with everything,
Yes.
And
that's one of the most annoying things that I've seen is you've seen everybody with the outstretched hand over the stimulus bill.
Yeah.
It's not even a stimulus bill because we're not putting money in to stimulate the economy. This isn't stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
This is simply on a kind of like a handout.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rescue for the people and for the businesses that are suffering. We are not stimulating the economy.
No, you're trying to keep it afloat.
Yes.
That's the difference here. And really, I mean, I guess in a way, you can argue that is in and of itself a stimulus, because when do you enact a stimulus? It is to keep it afloat. But you're doing it by artificial means.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the issue comes in, I mean, it's like the difference between, like meat and tofu. You might get your nutrients from tofu, but it ain't going to taste like a hamburger.
It ain't the same.
It just isn't the same. You can make it look however you want. You can make it smell however you want. I guess the more appropriate comparison would be the Impossible burgers. Yeah, like the Impossible Whoppers, the Impossible Burgers, and actual meat, not just tofu. Tofu is kind of it's kind of outdated, honestly. It's kind of been moved aside because of like the veggie slider and the veggie burger kind of thing. That's a bit more of an apt comparison. You know what? You can dress it up all you want. You can show me all the commercials of you deceiving people and giving them an inferior product.
That would just anger me.
But bottom line, it's not a burger. And the bottom line is that this is not actual it isn't simulating the market. Okay, whenever you're having to go in and you're just having to disseminate funds in whatever way you think would be best, it's not really stimulating the economy in the way that it should be. And there's more factors, there's more tentacles than we can even really think in terms of how certain actions affect other businesses and other industries. And that really only comes with hindsight, that those things. We don't have the benefit of hindsight here because we're obviously in it.
Yeah.
Now, in 20, 30 years, whenever we look back, it's kind of like whenever we look back at the recession in 2008, 2009, how we're like, oh, well, this is what was happening. You had the housing market and the bubble there and, banks and loans and all that kind of crap. That's the way that we look back at that. Later on, we will have that hindsight, but right now we don't. But what we do have is the ability to look at what we are doing right now and compare it to the past and compare it to just basic economic theory and know that this doesn't work. Know that this is, I mean, in the short term, yes, it will work, but we have to find a way to keep those gears rolling somehow. And that, I think, is everyone's on the same page on that they want to get the economy back up and running. That's where the stuff with social distancing and all that kind of stuff.
I think it will work. Once this passes, I think that you'll see the economy pop back the way that it was. Because this wasn't policy change. This wasn't a natural recession, you could say. This was an artificially
this wasn't a market reset.
Self-imposed.
Now, one thing that I will be interested to see, and people in financial circles have been talking for a long time about a reset, and our economic policy is just putting off an inevitable reset because the market has to reset at some point. That's just the way it goes. You do have those natural dips and then the rises. That's basic economic theory of the Kondrackian wave. And that's how our economic system works. And what we've been doing for a long time is artificially trying to push that dive off. We've been trying to keep going up and up and up and up and up. The thing is that there are naturally, like I said, hills and valleys, and we've been trying to keep those valleys as flat as possible. And it's going to catch up with us, and this might be it catching up with us. I mean, I'm not an economist, I don't know, but it will be interesting to see. And, truthfully, does this come out to be, dare I say, a bit of a blessing in disguise in terms of our economic situation? Because we've been overdue for a correction for a long time. We've been overdue for that dip. And I don't want to say recession, but I mean it's even smaller than a recession. A recession is a miniaturized depression.
Yes.
It's even smaller than a recession, but it is a market downturn. So if this coincides directly with COVID-19, does that kind of become a blessing in disguise because it kind of helps us get back to zero, if that makes sense. It helps us reset our standard. And we were also dealing with coronavirus, so it's not just coming out of nowhere and absolutely, wrecking everything just because of economic policy. But also, it comes on the heels of a pandemic. I don't know.
You're lucky that the economy honestly has been so strong and has grown so much, because now there is the pain and there is the hurt of this, but it is not nearly as bad and as much as it would have hurt even in 2016.
Yeah, and that's kind of been what people have been saying. Like I was just talking about with the market downturns and how we've been pushing that off, is it's going to happen at some point. You can only keep everything held up with popsicle sticks for so long. Eventually, something's going to break, and all you're doing is just pushing that pain off. But whenever it comes, it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt bad.
I mean, you've been in a bull market now for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was the longest bull market run in American stock history. And the thing about the stock market, and I know people freak out about that. The thing about the stock market is that do you really expect for all these businesses to be shut down, for these states to have stay-at-home orders, and the stock market's not going to drop? We know what's going to happen, okay? We don't need to have it beaten into our heads every day. We don't need to look at it every 10 minutes. Just let it do what it's going to do. Because the stock market right now is so volatile anyway. You look at it, and it literally has done this multiple times, to where it will be down 2,000 points one day. The very next day, it will have regained everything it lost the day before. And the next day, it will be down another 900 points. The next day, it will be up 1,500. Mm-hmm. And it does that. It's been doing that since this whole kind of thing has started.
Since about the middle of March.
Yeah. And it's just calm down. I mean, that's what we said at the beginning of our last episode. Just calm down. Now, that was because we haven't posted and derelicted our duty to you, our audience, for such a long time. But that's really the motif of where we are right now, is to just calm down. All right? We're going to be okay. We are going to be okay. Now, I know that, fresh fears have come bubbling to the surface with the numbers that there could be potentially 100,000 to 240,000 Americans who die as a result of coronavirus. Now, granted, that is our worst case scenario. And I believe, was it the Washington Post? I believe that there was an article. And this is the kind of political stuff that infuriates me during this time, is that you then had an article in the Washington Post talking about how experts, and I believe Rush Limbaugh was talking about this yesterday, and that is that experts were saying that something to the effect of how they don't doubt the White House's, numbers and all that kind of stuff, but they don't know where they came from. And it's like, the White House isn't just making numbers up out of thin air. The White House has gone to the foremost modelers and the foremost scientists and experts in terms of virus and disease control and pandemic response. They've gone to you for their models, and now you're like, we don't know where that came from. We don't know where you're getting those numbers. And it's that kind of political crap, because that's what that is. Okay, this is the anonymous sources during the Mueller report and the Mueller hearings and the impeachment process. This is the same difference here. It's the anonymous sources tell us that Trump is secretly sweating bullets. It's the same thing here.
In fact, I believe at the press conference, when they revealed that graph that had the 100 to 240,000 people, up at the very top left-hand corner of the graph, I do believe I recall the name of the modelist that made it.
Yeah.
And wasn't it Harvard University even?
Yeah. These people are all affiliated with Harvard University and a couple of other private modeling and data.
Do people even stand up there and say where they got the graph from and who made it?
Yeah. and it's just this kind of, political crap. And that the bottom line is that this is all political. And if you thought any different, hate to put a pin in your bubble, hate to burst it for you, but it is. Because why? It involves the federal government and it involves Washington. And really this is going to go both ways on this. All right, I'm just going to get out in front of it and say this is going to go both ways. And if you think for a minute that people are not going to use this to a political advantage in one way or another, you're sadly mistaken. As sad as that might be, okay, there will be people on the left, and we've already seen it. We've seen Nancy Pelosi come out and start talking about investigations and stuff in terms of the coronavirus response, and she wants to know what Trump knew and when he knew it. You've already started seeing that on the left.
It's done with every single disaster, whether that's a hurricane, it's a tornado, it doesn't matter. It's politicized.
And the people who are in charge during that time are going to use it, in this case, it's the Republicans, to, they are going to spin it in the most positive way possible to use it as a reason to be reelected, whether you agree with that or not, or whether you agree with the left's analysis of this, whenever this is all said and done or not, or if you agree with the right, the Republicans, Trump, whomever. Whoever's analysis, it is all going to be used to their political gain, whether you like it or not, whether you see it or not. I'm here to put a pin in your bubble. That's just the way it is. But we want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the WireTap. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter. We are on Twitter. It's capital TCNW. It's at the CWire, capital TCNW. And make sure you follow us on SoundCloud as well. We are going to be posting these on SoundCloud for the foreseeable future. Moving away from YouTube just a little bit for a while. But we really do thank all of you for watching us and for listening to us in whatever way you might. So for Logan, I am JD saying goodbye. God bless, and we will see you next time.